but to do it right, to do it in a way that will provide for long-term economic benefits in this country, not just some short-term bailout. Now, I again would quote Alan Blinder, former member of the Federal Reserve, a distinguished economist. Quote, "I totally disagree that this needs to be done this week. It's more important to get it right," Blinder said. I agree with Professor Blinder. It's more important to get it right. And now I see the plan that they're talking about. I was told yesterday that the plan was going to be, they were going to put out $250 billion right away, with another $100 billion that he could access if he wanted to. And then before we could get the other $300 or $350 billion, they would come to Congress and we would have to then authorize it and appropriate it. Oh, no. Now what I read, much different than that. We're going to give him $250 billion, another $100 billion that they can access without any questions. And then the other $300 or $350 billion they can use without ever coming to Congress to ask for it. But we get 30 days to say that they can't use it. Well, you know what that's like. That's never going to happen. That's never going to happen. And if Mr. Paulson says that they're not going to spend $700 billion right away, they're going to maybe use $50 billion next month and $50 billion the next month and that kind of thing, it seems to me what we need to do is to let the American people know that we, the Congress, are not going to let the economic system go under. So what we do is we should just put out, $250 billion. Make sure we cap executive pay. Oh, by the way, that's another thing. We're going to cap executive pay. Now we're going to kind of leave it up to the secretary and leave it up to some board to decide what is fair compensation. And who's going to be on the board? Why, people from the industry. What a sweetheart deal that's going to be. I have to say that if people are coming to the government and asking the taxpayers of this country to bail them out, that's like being on the government payroll. And if they're going to be on the government payroll, they ought not to be paid any more than what government employees are paid. I'd even go as far as to say they can get paid as much as the president, but they shouldn't get paid any more than the president of the United States, period. But that's not what we're facing. Now, if they want to have a package that's, okay, here's $250 billion, maybe they can get another 100, but it ought to sunset, like in January or February, and then Congress ought to come back, see where we are, see how much more money we need, see if the compensation things have been working right, see if we're getting equity in these companies, and then let's have a more deliberate debate and consideration of what we might want to do in January or February when we come back. Well, we raised this with Mr. Paulson the other evening, and he was adamant. No, we got to have the $700 billion, got to have it all now, because that will give the confidence to the market that we have enough money to buy up all this worthless paper. Well, what about the Congress giving some assurance to the American public that we're going to be here? We're going to give them some money, but we want to make sure they do it right, folks. And we're going to guard the taxpayers' dollars. And yes, we'll be back here in January, we'll be back here in February, and if we need to do more, we can do more then, but in a more deliberative manner than what we're being asked to rush to do now before an election. Lastly, Mr. President, there's a couple of other things I must say about this bailout. You know, if a company comes in, let's say they're facing bankruptcy, they come into a bank to get help. You think the bank will just give them money? Oh, you need money. What is it you want? And we'll give it to you. The bank is going to want to see their books. They're not just their balance sheet. They want to know how they got in that situation. What kind of models did they use to get to that point where they are right now, and what their valuation may be? Well, I suggested, Mr. Paulson, the other night that we should do that to every one of these investment firms that come in. If they come in and they're bidding and they're putting their bids up, as I understand, in a reverse auction kind of a system, and they want the taxpayers to buy this worthless paper, or whatever it might be, well, it would seem to me that one of the conditions ought to be they open their books. That we get to see exactly what it was that they used in deciding how they invested their money. What got them to this point? I have a sneaking suspicion that a lot of them don't want to let us know that. Because I think there was, quite frankly, and I'll say this very frankly and forthrightly, I think there was a lot of accounting fraud going on. No, I'm selling to you, you sell to me, I sell to you, and every time we make a profit on it. Well, that just doesn't really work, folks. But it seems to me a lot of that was going on. But we need to know. And yet I see nothing in this bailout plan that will mandate that we have independent auditors go in and that we mandate that they have to let us see not just their balance sheet. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what did they use during the last few years to get to the point where they are now? What were their internal models? Their proprietary models that they used in conducting their business. We need to know that. And quite frankly, I don't see that in this bailout plan. And lastly, we got to make sure there's no arbitrage going on where you have people from foreign countries or hedge funds and stuff dumping worthless papers into banks later on, down in January and February and March, and we just keep filling the swamp with worthless paper. I don't see anything in this bailout plan that will stop that either. So again, Mr. President, I didn't mean to get off too much on the bailout plan. I'll have more to say about that later. I just wanted to make my point that we're going to be voting on a stimulus package that will go out to help people on the bottom of the economic pyramid, to help them get through the winter, to give them jobs, to build schools, to get infrastructure projects going. $56 billion. Okay, that is about out of $1 trillion that we're being asked on the bailout. When you add it all up, what is that? 10, 20, about 1/20th? Is that what it is? Not 10%, about 5%. 5% of what they're asking us to do for Wall Street, we're saying let's do for Main Street of America. That's the least we can do.